Because so many of you have asked how I change my oil, I'm going to make a quick video and show you how I do it. First things first, don't wear nice clothing. I've had this since high school. There's a potential chance I might get covered in oil. Secondly, make a nice clean spot to do so. Next, have your vehicle warmed up. As I've mentioned in my first vehicle, I always warm my vehicle up before moving it, and definitely before oil changes. I just took her out for a nice rip. And I never trust those metal collapsible car ramps. For me, I always use trusted wood. I like to stagger the wood like this. Boom. First one. Make a little ramp just like that. And now I get in my car, drive forward, and I can feel when I hit the top. And now we are on top of the ramp. Pro tip, I always have all my tools available when I start this, and when you get a car, take a look at what size socket you use for doing oil changes and put in a notepad. For Mara, we use a 17mm. And that's it. I always like to have a soapy rag ready, just in case. This time, I picked up a Fram auto filter, made in America. I typically have Parts Master, but this one says it's good for 20,000 miles, which means I'll get at least 2 oil changes out before changing this. Let's slide up under here and get the oil draining. Now looking underneath my vehicle, if you check right here, we've got my oil drain plug right here and the oil filter. Both incredibly accessible. Thank you, Honda, for that. I've removed this wind blocker plastic and I've kept it off forever. Next, make sure your socket's in the loosen setting. Pop it on. There we go. Now it's loose and I can unscrew it by hand. Next, position your oil catcher and loosen until the oil starts draining. I usually get a slight bit of oil on me like this, and that's what the rag's for. Typically don't like changing the oil on such a windy day or at 5 o'clock at night, but since the sun's out and we're expecting snow tomorrow, I might as well get it done. While that's draining, I'll show you what I do with the hood. While the oil's draining, I always like to pop the hood and loosen the oil cap. This will ensure there's no vacuum on the engine as the oil comes out. I also always like to clean the oil cap. While I clean around the area of the oil cap, which is right here, I always like to make sure, because sometimes sand gets right in here, in this little rim, always make sure the sand is brushed out and not into the area of the oil. So it's nice and clean in here. Boom, that's looking great. Now with the oil drained out, I like to insert the oil plug again. I always wear gloves because this can be messy. I just hand tighten it. Technically you should get a new oil ring every time, a crushable oil ring. Clean around it. Retighten it. Good. Nice and snug. And then I get to the oil filter. Now to get to the oil filter, I've got it pre-loosened a little bit. There we go. Here's where it makes a mess. Now I always try to catch it before it falls in the oil so I can guide it down gently without splashing all over my face. There we go. Good. Not terrible. A little bit of a mess. Then I turn my glove inside out. A little bit of splatter there. Boom. Not too bad. I always say hopefully this is my last oil change before my Tesla. We'll see though. Jaber really wants me to get my oil analyzed since I now have 407,000 miles on my car. So with the oil filter removed and your plug in and tight, I always like to clean around where the oil filter goes just to make sure the ring is not left up there. I've heard horror stories with double rings left up there. And there's no ring, it's clean. Okay, so I've now cleaned where the oil filter goes. I'll show you what that looks like. So again, sliding under my car, I'll show you where the oil filter goes. Right up there. Perfect. And then I clean this before I'm all done, right there. Get rid of that oil. And I'll show you how I prep my new one. Now, I've done this the same way my whole life. I get a new oil filter, open it up, and always take a new bead of oil. I always shake these up to make sure all the sediments are mixed in. And always go like this. Get a little bit of oil and put it around the seal. Just like that. And now we're ready to hand tighten this under the car. Now with that nice bead of oil around the gasket, insert it up here and just hand tighten it. So what I do is I spin it really fast until it hits the car. It's now hit the top of the vehicle where the threads are on, and then I just give it about maybe 2.5, 3 spins until it's pretty snug. I do that every time, but I'm also not a mechanic. Now with the oil plug in and the filter, I'm going to make sure it's still tight. Yep. So I did that. Make sure I triple check everything. Clean up. Now I'll show you how I fill it. Now for filling the vehicle's oil, I always make sure I use a funnel. Boom. And then as I showed you before, I always make sure it's well shaken. This time I'm using Valvoline High Mileage Extended Protection. Full synthetic, I've been using that since I got the car. And no, I don't put in the recommended amount because I just always add the full 5 quarts. I don't know what it's supposed to take, nor do I care. I just know I've never had any problems with this. And then one thing I always like to do before I even move my vehicle an inch is write down the type of oil I've used and the number of miles and the date of what I changed it, and then I add that to a spreadsheet because that's just what I do. I'll include the spreadsheet on here as well. Now don't forget to put your oil cap back on. And that's how I change my oil.